In 82% of online sex crimes against minors, the offender used the victim's social networking site to gain information about the victim's likes and dislikes. When crimes are committed, only 1 in 3 people will report sexual crimes to a trusted adult. Let's talk about that. That's next.
Educating the kids, keeping computers in a centralized area of the home. Look for some definite warning signs. If your child starts acting differently, if you see them minimizing screens when you walk into the room, if they're afraid to give you passwords, you should be monitoring what your children are doing online.
A lot of parents might find it shocking that 1 out of 5 kids is solicited online. What they might find even more chilling is that 100% of kids molested by online predators went willingly to the meeting.
This is Understanding the Times Radio with Jan Markell. We're here to keep you informed on current events with a biblical worldview. This hour, Jan takes on the tough issues involving online sex predators with her guest, author and investigator, Patrick Crough. Patrick was with us last year when we first approached this issue. Along with Patrick, you'll meet a father who will tell his story about what happened to his son. Today's program is for every parent and grandparent. We want you to be aware of this growing problem among our youth. Here now is Jan Markell.
And welcome to the program. We look at news, views, inconvenient truths from a decidedly biblical perspective. And we are revisiting a topic and guest I featured several months ago, investigator Patrick Crough, who is looking to protect your kids and grandkids from the legions of stalking predators out there today. Also online, I have a dad whose teenage son was recently stalked and online, and the incident could have led to disastrous consequences. Happily, it did not, but he has a word of warning for you as well. And if you have a child, grandchild who's preteen or teen, it is almost a guarantee. Particularly if they spend a lot of time on the electronic various instruments, that someone will want to become a predator to them. So if you do, listen up, please. And Olive Tree Ministries is carrying a couple of products to help you better understand this dilemma. I'll say much more about that as we move into the program. What I'd like to do is I'd like to play a 60-second little public service announcement that goes out over primarily television, so we're going to have to get along without the visual, because a lot of people take this problem real seriously.
Meeting a teen girl online is actually pretty easy. You can go into any chat room and just start talking. Most of the girls are usually so insecure and desperate for attention.
Attention from older guys is totally flattering. They're so much more mature and understanding than the guys my age.
Age actually works to my advantage. They like to brag to their friends that they're dating an older guy, so I just play along and pretend I'm really interested.
Interested in the same things I am. You can talk forever and really get to know someone without worrying about looks or whatever. That's the best thing about
chatting seems unthreatening to them, so they lower their guard. After a while, I start talking about how we're soulmates and how lucky we are to have found each other.
Other people don't understand. I know what I'm doing. If you really care about each other, there's nothing wrong with
meeting them is the goal. Once I get them out of their house, well, that's when things get really interesting.
Online predators know what they're doing. Do you?
Patrick Crough, welcome back.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on your program again, Jan.
When you heard that, what were your thoughts? Because this is what you deal with all the time.
It's just classic. That's all I'll say. It's just classic. Both the victimology aspect and the predator profile that you illustrated with this.
You know, I've gone through your book here a couple of times and the other product, and we'll talk about that later, but you talk about millstone justice in the book. As a matter of fact, that's even the name of your website, is millstonejustice.org. What is Millstone Justice?
Millstone Justice is a nonprofit organization that myself and several other people in my community set up after publishing my first book that basically dealt with this issue about educating parents and child caregivers and how to reduce the risks to their child being targeted and both victimized by a child predator.
But the term millstone, what does that mean?
The term millstone it's actually from the gospel. There's two, three places in the gospel where Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he essentially tells them that for anyone to mislead a child or offend a child, it would be better that a millstone be tied around their neck and then thrown into the deep sea, face God's wrath for such a heinous sin.
You say sometimes you'll look at a perpetrator in the face as you're quizzing him, and you'll talk to him about this millstone justice. And how do they respond? You say the look on their face is really something else. So what is it you think they're perceiving?
Well, and that's a really good point. You're right, I do. If this person is somebody that I would consider more pathological, it doesn't have much of an effect. But for the average person who's victimized a child or is taken up to predatory ways, it's hard to find somebody in the Western Society of America that doesn't know about Jesus Christ. So when I bring up the issue of a millstone and I talk to them and I advise them that this came from our Lord and Savior himself, his thoughts about offending a child, it certainly gets their attention.
Does that help them give up any more information?
Well, sometimes, Jan, I don't know. But I do know for one thing, with the help of the Holy Spirit, it certainly convicts their soul on the spot. And whether they're going to tell the truth or not is yet to be seen many a times in the interview like that. However, I do know it has an impact on their soul and their spirit. And it's something they're going to take away from the interview, and if nothing else, dwell on what was said and what was basically something that they can't even deny is going to affect them more than they thought.
Well, you say that these offenders often confess to decades of abuse against a child, and they get away with it for decades. To me, that's what's one of the things that's so shocking. And obviously that's why guys like you exist, to try to crack these things and put an end to this. And obviously it's a situation where there's almost no end until the next life where we don't have to deal with these kinds of people. So you indicate that some of these offenders go through years and years and years of this kind of activity, and they actually keep getting away with it. How come? I mean, last time you were on, Patrick, we're going to get there because we want to revisit it. We talked about how the whole world of electronics has been the biggest seducer of preteens and teens in this troubling arena for certainly the last 10, 15 years, because they meet online and then they will likely meet them in person. But the stalking has always been a problem. And what you have suggested, and when I hear you and read you, is that in the 21st century, it's gone out of control. It's a pandemic because of electronics. But why is it some of these fellows, and you say it's 99% of the time it's guys, how come they're getting away with it so long?
Well, it's a crime that has a lot to do with manipulating their targeted victim. And as I explain in the book you're referring to, it involves several elements or phases of that, the victimization of that child, a process. Some people call it grooming. I think grooming is a bit of a homogenized term for this. It's more diabolical than grooming. It's very manipulative, and it's just downright insidious. They gain that child's trust, as you heard. They, in that little excerpt you started the show with, they gain that child's trust. They put up a facade of what they're really not. It's truly they're putting something up that they're representing another, many times, something less than honest. And it's a lie. I would say people can't conceive an adult doing to a child. Yeah. Many of us out there just can't even conceive that another adult would be this way.
I agree. The
trust aspect is huge, gaining the trust of the child's parents, the manipulation that goes on. It's very satanic. And then it evolves into what I would call the courtship element or phase, where, again, this person, as you heard that perpetrator talking about how he will play to that child's feelings and thoughts about themselves, their sexual development, and say the things they know that's going to trigger certain physiological and emotional responses in that child. And then it goes into the seduction phase. That seduction, it's just a heightened type of courtship. And, you look back when we courted each other as young adults and meeting our mates, it's a fun, exciting process of getting to know somebody that you really feel like you may be spending the rest of your life with. That's the mindset they put these children in. And these children obviously are not mature enough to understand what's going on. And once that seduction is completed, then obviously it evolves into what I would call the offending stage, the actual sexual offending stage. And that can last for days, weeks, months, even years. Yep. Then, Jan, which is the most diabolical part of this, is the control phase. The control phase is where they keep these kids in bondage, even after the physical abuse has been completed or may even be, ceased. They control these children into their adulthood, and the abuser becomes the accuser. Again, that satanic aspect of blaming the victim for why this happened to them.
If you join me late, you are listening to Understanding the Times Radio. I'm Jan Markell, and I have brought back, because Patrick Crough had only a few minutes with me some months ago, and folks wanted to hear a little bit more about Seducers Among Our Children. That is the name of one of his books that this ministry carries, olivetreeviews.org, views as in viewpoint. Seducers Among Our Children, How to Protect Your Child from Sexual Predators, a Police Investigator's Perspective. We carry the book. Give us a call or go online and order the book. I highly recommend it. We have it in a much smaller version, a little booklet, 5 things you can do to protect your kids from sexual predators, and that is by Patrick Crough as well. You can get either or both. I'm not here to make a sale, folks. I really am not. I am here to equip you today. We're going to bring another guest on here in a few minutes who's been through this. So we're trying to equip you today to better understand what's out there. If you're a parent, grandparent, if you're an aunt or an uncle, you got nieces, nephews, whatever, you need to be equipped to understand the times as it concerns this situation. I'm going to play a short soundbite. I'm not promoting Dr. Phil's program, but I am promoting this particular emphasis he has on this program, which he calls Pursuing the Predator program. He has a 16-year-old girl on, Zoe, and her mother. Zoe is doing exactly what Patrick's been talking about that first soundbite. She is as naive as they come. She's just having a ball talking to strangers, and she's risking her life. And I think because of this program, Phil may have saved her life.
Zoe, you are a lovely young woman. I mean, really, you are delightful. Your personality, you're very articulate. You have so many wonderful things going for you. Why are you doing this self-destructive behavior? Do you just think it's cool and hip, or it's not dangerous? Or tell me what you think about this.
I guess I don't really find it to be that dangerous when I think about it, because I really get, I talk to the people online, and I know that they could be something that they're not, but you can tell the difference by somebody who just copies pictures and takes fake pictures and somebody who really does take real pictures.
How do you tell that?
By who comments their pictures. You can tell. If it's just a bunch of girls that comment guys' pictures, it's not real. But if their friends do, and you go look at their friends, their top friends, and if they're on their top friends, and you can tell that they live in the same area and they talk regularly, you can tell.
She truly believes she has a system, and let me give you an example of where we're at right now. She has met somebody online that lives in California, actually, that she talks to regularly and has tried to come to meet us in another state, to meet her in another state. She truly believes that this person is the one, and she's never even met this person.
Okay, but tell me why you would opt for that instead of dating a young man in your school or at your church or in your community. Why would you go for a pig and a poke when in somebody you don't even know?
Well, because usually when I date people that I live with, it starts a lot of drama, and I prefer long distance. I have a thing for long distance. I like long distance relationships.
You ain't seen drama. You talk about drama in that they want to take you to the movies and you don't want to go, so their feelings are hurt. That's not drama. Drama is finding your body in a bar ditch somewhere. That's drama. Listen, seriously, and it's not about you, it's about who you're letting into your life. Now, Mama, I've got to talk to you for a second here. I made a list of the things that you say here. You say that you take her computer away, but you give it back.
I don't.
Who does?
We have joint custody, her father and I. When she's at my house, I'm very restrictive. She does not have any computer access.
Her father doesn't want her raped and killed?
No, of course not. I think what he's thinking probably is, you're a consequence. You're grounded, you're doing this, we'll take your phone away, we'll take your computer away, and after you've shown me the right things that you're supposed to do, we'll give it back.
Well,
and I suppose I can't answer for that.
Okay, but the truth is, it's taken away and given back, and you do the same thing again, right?
Correct.
I mean, be honest.
Yeah, I do.
I can't tell you how many times we have removed her MySpace page and she builds it right back up.
Okay, and how does she build it back up?
Because she's given access
to
the computer again.
And who owns that?
Her father.
And he's letting her do this?
Correct.
And he's not here today?
Correct.
Dad, seriously, let's talk. I'm not trying to be condescending to you or to your daughter, but you have to look at the pattern here. Your daughter has said that if she has access to a computer, she is going to connect with men on the computer. And they are out there. The detective here from Jefferson County, Colorado, has gotten over 300 people just in that one county in a fairly remote area. Are you kidding me? I mean, they're out there, and she is finding them, and they are finding her. If you can't trust her on the computer, she cannot have access to the computer. Parents have to parent. Parent is not a noun, it is a verb.
Okay, I want to bring into the discussion Michael, will not use a last name, and we're going to get into his story in the next segment, but I still want to bring Michael into the discussion. Michael, welcome to the program.
Hi, Jen. Thank you.
What do you think of that little clip? Because we're going to talk about your son, Joshua, who did some similar things. So as you heard that little 3.5-minute clip, what did you think?
Well, I certainly felt that she was an at-risk youth. Being parented in two different households is quite a difficult thing, and it also sounded like she could not or would not understand the dangers associated with going online and talking with strangers.
Well, as I was, Michael, watching a lot of YouTubes and reading some items to fully get acquainted with this awful topic, and, I come across terms that some of our listeners, they don't understand, and you and I talked about this on the phone. You got MySpace, you got chat rooms, and, of course, Facebook and Twitter. Most of us are familiar with that. One of you gentlemen, give me an explanation here. Michael, you can make a stab at it here. Chat room, it plays into this. What's a chat room?
Well, chat room is an anonymous environment where you can speak with other people. They don't know who you are, and you don't know who they are. You can make up anything. You can make up your name. You can make up where you're from, and no one will ever know the truth.
Patrick, weigh into that. What's MySpace? What's that all about?
It's similar. It's where these youths, who I might add, are in an explosive part of their sexual development. And this is where the parental supervision is just paramount. And let me add to this what we just heard before we lose this part of the presentation. Dr. Phil said some very nice things to that young lady. Did you notice that?
Yes.
She's beautiful, she's gifted, you have a lot to offer. Did anybody feel like he was being inappropriate? No, he wasn't. He was talking in a manner and the way an adult is trying to encourage a young woman who's developing, or a young man, to say, you are a very special person. But here's where it goes sideways with the predator. They say the same things with the most, just the same kind of earnest sincerity. However, then capped off with, people don't really understand just how wonderful you are. I do. I bet you your parents don't tell you enough. I am the person that sees exactly what's going on with you. These are the things that's being said in addition to what Dr. Phil said. Because the perps are very manipulative, gifted, charismatic person when it comes to communicating with the youth are today. And so they're going to take that, they're going to appeal to that young person's sexual development, their desire to be wanted, their desire to feel special. And that's where they cross. That's the seduction aspect. Okay, the courtship is when just making them feel good about themselves as a person. The seduction comes into play as a follow-up to say, you know what, I see that in you, and I bet you don't feel like most people see that. And the child's response more than likely is going to be, you're right, I am underappreciated. So when you take that and you put that into a cyber environment, just as Mike said, it's an anonymous environment.
Yeah.
These perps can be anybody. They can be another girl. They can be a teenage boy. Or they can just portray themselves as that perpetrator said at the beginning of the show. He's an older guy. He knows many of these young girls are seeking attention from a grown man.
Okay.
It makes them feel older and more mature. And so they begin to feel that, wow, I do have something to offer, and this person's recognized.
Okay, when we get back, I want to pick up on Michael's story with his son. And you might think, well, isn't this mainly girls who are stalked online? Not really. We're going to get into that in exactly 2 minutes when I come back from a short timeout. So don't go away. Don't touch your dial.
You may want to get some copies of this program to hand out to family members or your friends. To request a CD copy of this discussion, please call Olive Tree Ministries at 763-559-4444. Again, 763-559-4444. Our online address keeps you in touch with us. Click on olivetreeviews.org. On our website, you'll be able to connect to us electronically. The find all sorts of ways to follow us through our social media ministry. You can reach us by mail at Olive Tree Ministries, Post Office Box 1452, Maple Grove, Minnesota 55311. Jan will return shortly with more conversation with Patrick Crough and Michael.
Things that you're really going to want to pay attention to is what your child says when you're out with them, even with you standing right there. You'd be surprised how many child predators actually hide out in the wide open. You could be standing in line at the supermarket one day and a stranger can approach, comment on how cute your child is, ask your child's name, how old they are, and then all of a sudden they're asking what school your child goes to, and your child, being polite and feeling completely safe because you're standing right next to them, will give them this information. And in under 2 minutes, a predator will have all of the information that they need.
Before we continue with our second segment of discussion, remember Patrick Crough's resources are available inside our online bookstore at olivetreeviews.org. Here again is Jan Markell.
And welcome back. Just a quick reminder that a lot of you like to get a special CD of these programs. You can do that by calling us. Have to do that, call. Or become a CD subscriber. That's just $15 a month for a CD of every program we do on Understanding the Times Radio. We try to hit a lot of topics to help you be like the sons of Issachar, 1 Chronicles 12, who understood the times, and the Bible says God was pleased with the people of God who understood the times. And so that's what we attempt to do on this program and in this ministry. Let me reset the stage because we're talking about a difficult subject today, and that is some of the stalking that's going online because of our electronic generation, which obviously exploded some 20 years ago. And I have two guests online. One is Patrick Crough, who was with me several months ago, and he is the author of a book we did not carry back then, but we do now. Seducers Among Our Children, How to Protect Your Child from Sexual Predators, a police investigator's perspective. And that investigator is Patrick Crough. He's online with me. We carry the much shorter version of that, which is just a $2 booklet, 5 Things You Can Do to Protect Your Kids from Sexual Predators. Again, Patrick Crough. I also have on the line, actually, from the local area where I headquarter, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Michael, we're not using last names, and Michael has a son named Joshua who was a kind of a victim of all of this. And I'll tell you, I know Michael's son's story could have led to complete worst-case disaster. God did intervene, and that did not happen. Michael, your son, is he, 13 or 14 now?
He's 14.
He, according to the story you've given me, he tapped into multiple electronic opportunities, although actually not Facebook or Twitter, but he had an iPad, personal computer, he had access, of course, to the internet, and he met a friend online who was a predator. And Joshua, your son, thought he was talking to a 15-year-old girl. Is that right?
That's right.
Why did he think it was a 15-year-old girl?
Well, the person sent him a picture,
okay,
and said that they were a 15-year-old girl, and he was quite convinced.
He was?
Yeah.
Okay, so did they not have verbal communication? Is this only electronic?
It was only electronic, that's right.
Okay. You said to me, I noticed my son was on his iPad for extended periods, feverishly and intensely using the device. You said, I got nosy. I asked who he was talking with, and he stated a friend. He eventually said it was a friend from the YMCA, and then you said to me that you knew that was an untruth, and then you said soon Joshua would admit he was talking to a stranger on the internet. Michael, you told me that when you spoke with your son, he acknowledged that was what he was doing, and he acknowledged that it was not okay with your family value system.
That's right. We've had education at home, education at school, education from my parents, from Grandma and Grandpa, to not engage in this type of risky behavior.
So one night you're out for dinner, you get a call from the police. Joshua had been going to spend the night with a friend of his. Police call, it's kind of a panic deal, and apparently your son was with a friend, but your son was talking to the stalker who expressed such grief that maybe they had to break up. The friendship had to break up. The stalker was talking about suicide, and then your son started talking about suicide. Is that right?
Yeah, this predator had done a very good job of courting and seducing my son, and my son was talking with the stranger, and again told the stranger, my family says I can't talk to you anymore, and so the stranger then wanted to kill themselves, and my son was hurting with the stranger and wanted to kill himself with the stranger.
Your son's friend there intervened and went to his mother, and said, we got to step in here. And I think that's when you were called and you came and picked him up. Is that right?
Yeah, my son had expressed to one of his classmates that he was going to kill himself and had a knife.
Mm-hmm.
And that classmate thankfully went and told their mother, and that precipitated into the police getting involved.
How did you feel when you got that call and you got that information and there was a knife and there was talk of, oh my goodness, I mean, as a dad, how do you respond to that?
Well, at first I was in complete denial. I couldn't understand why on a Friday night that the police were calling me and wanted to do a health and welfare check on my son. So I'd say that my initial feelings were complete denial.
Well, but you were going to pick him up and you were going to have a conversation with him the next day, which was going to be rather revealing. You had a 5-hour talk with him. Tell me just a little bit about that.
Well, it was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had in my life. The hardest conversation. I can't recall anything being more difficult than sitting across the table from your child and learning that, your child was being pursued by someone who made him feel special, unique, made him feel good, made him feel wanted, made him feel desired, made him feel like he had a true friend.
You're his dad. You're his true friend. You're his true friend. So why this?
Well, looking backwards now, I can see that, my son, he was in a vulnerable place. And I heard our guest Patrick earlier talk about how these teens are in a very dynamic stage of their development as a person. And, hearing my son share those things, it wasn't easy.
Patrick Crough, and we're not done yet with this story by any means, but Patrick, step in here. What are you hearing?
What I'm hearing is some great parenting. And let me start out by saying there's a lot of great parents out there that have fallen victim to this. And it's not because of bad parenting. It's because of what I would say fail to recognize, simply because they're naive, to just how diabolical, manipulative another adult can be toward a child. But, I look upon parents as shepherds of their flocks. And Mike here has done a remarkable job in explaining the process of what happened and how he responded by just picked up on something very important, Jan. He picked up on the fact that his son was consumed with his activity on whatever device he was using, whether it was his handheld smartphone or computer or iPad or whatever it was. He picked up on it. He started as a good shepherd. He started impeding his child's activity on that just by questioning him, holding him accountable. Now, it didn't stop it, but it certainly started to hinder it.
Mm-hmm.
And, it demonstrated the great relationship he had with his son, where his son started communicating what he thought to be a young girl his age, saying, look, my parents want me to stop this, And it's interesting, there's no phone conversation, and most teenage kids like to talk on the phone
right.
and get to know each other. So that's a definite red flag. Mike picked up on that. Something's awry here. So looking at this, he did everything right. And let me just say this, Mike. Our children will manipulate and deceive us and seek assistance from their friends, who are their enablers, to carry out what it is they believe to be a fantasy. And we as parents, unfortunately, can't, we're not lie detectors, but we need to get to know our children. And that's apparently what happened here. I'm not saying your son deceived you or manipulated you, but he set the stage where he was having a night over with a friend, and what did that do? It didn't impede him from taking part in more activity with this person. But to his son's credit, he started laying the foundation with this person that, look, I'm not going to be able to do this much longer because my parents are hip to this, and they're going to intervene. And so, Mike, you did exactly what I would have parents do. You kept an eye on what was going on in your kid's life. You weren't too busy. You weren't too tired. You weren't too distracted, because that's what us parents fall victim to. We're too distracted, too overworked, too tired, just too this and too that. And as much as our children mean so much to us, it's easy to just fall into a complacent attitude when it comes to this. And these devices are portals or gateways for the perps to gain access into the sanctity of our homes.
Michael, you actually, you just ripped out the computer out of your son's bedroom. I think you disconnected the internet altogether, so there was no opportunity to resume. Am I right there?
Well, I think I want to say thank you to Patrick. I think he's been far too kind. I don't feel like I've been a great father with the situation, but when I did learn the extent of who my son was talking with, what he was talking about, I became so concerned that I immediately went into his room and I tore the devices right out of the wall. I didn't even stop to unplug or loosen screws. I just removed all the equipment and placed it in the center of our living room. I did disconnect the internet for, I'd say we were offline for almost a couple of months. It was tough, Jen.
I think you showed Joshua some YouTubes on this whole predator problem, and you said that he watched these YouTubes, how this starts and where it ends, and he really could relate to that. Was that kind of a little bit of an education for him?
Yes, there's a lot of good literature. I'm especially interested in learning more from Patrick, but there's a lot of great ways for parents to equip and arm themselves. I would hope every parent would spend some time with their child and talk about it. I don't think that in a perfect world that'll happen, but it was too late, in my opinion. It was too late in our house. Something had already happened. When I went to the internet to try and look for resources, I found an abundance of resources, and I didn't know if all of them were Christian-based. But we did look at some videos about predators, and that material did resonate with my son.
How are things as we speak? This incident sort of culminated last September, so that's a number of months ago now. So several months later, how are things now?
We have a new joke in our home. Some folks may not find it as humorous, but we joke about not having any new friends. We got plenty of friends already. Some we want to give to other people.
Right.
But I'd say that things have resumed to a new normal. The internet is to be used in a public open space in our house, so the internet isn't used behind closed doors under any circumstances. And we use an internet filtering tool which carefully inspects what material is allowed inside the house.
Well, let's give the name of that. It's something I'm not familiar with. Remember, I'm not a parent, so...
Yeah, it's called OpenDNS. And it's free. Earlier I heard you talking about this isn't a sales show, and no one's here to sell anyone anything. OpenDNS is a free tool. I think over 30 million Americans use OpenDNS every day, whether they know it or not. It's a system, it's a tool that works in conjunction with your internet service provider and your router. And this tool called OpenDNS, it's also called the Family Shield version of OpenDNS. It's easy, it's free, there's no fees, it's intuitive. So if you feel technically challenged, you'll be okay. This is easy stuff. And it literally squashes the crud before it can even be displayed on your computer screen.
And folks, you can learn more about this entire dilemma we're talking about. There's all sorts of sources. Millstonejustice.org is Patrick Crough's website, millstonejustice.org. Again, the booklet is 5 Things You Can Do to Protect Your Kids from Sexual Predators. The full book is Seducers Among Our Children. That's Olive Tree Views, VIEWS, olivetreeviews.org. You can communicate with Patrick at that millstonejustice.org as well. Patrick, respond to some of the couple of things that Michael said here.
Well, again, I'm going to go back to what Michael initially said. Again, I understand his sense of, he feels guilty to some level that he might have missed. But, again, at that adolescence age, teenage, they're difficult to supervise because they know how to push our buttons. They know how to manipulate us, say the right things to give themselves some space and room. The perpetrators will assist them in helping in trying to deceive their parents because they say things like, hey, you know what, maybe try this with your mom and dad to get a little more privacy so we continue to talk, so I can continue to help you develop sexually and help you work through your sexuality. Because parents are awkward, they feel so inadequate to do that. And, who wants to talk about that with mom and dad?
Sure.
And that's the isolation aspect of this. Isolate the child.
That's right.
Again, I credit Mike. He saw something amiss with his son. He acted on it. And that is the key. We can talk later in the show about how we can reduce the risk pre that. But his response to what he observed was just spot on.
Okay, Patrick, do you think then, and maybe Michael knows, but do you think that this supposed 15-year-old female who was talking online to Joshua was a female?
Not having all the facts, I think based on what Michael told me about some of the topics they were discussing, I'm suspect that it was a male adult, and the reason why is usually when youth get into some heavy conversation, they want to talk, they want to connect. And it sounds like that didn't happen here. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but it sounds like it was all electronic. And if that's the case, then that's a key element to me that this person wasn't who they were, portraying themselves to be, and trying to get his son into some inappropriate sexual behavior, maybe to stimulate his own perversions by getting this young teenage boy to do things and say things to him to then stimulate him sexually, being the perp. Again, I haven't talked to Mike about the details of this, but just based on, if he were to tell me that he was in fact talking to what he believed to be a teenage girl, then that does change things up a little bit.
Yeah. Michael, do you know?
I don't know beyond, the reasonable doubt that yes, this was a man. However, based on the nature of the conversations, the constant sexual dialogue, and what my son did tell me is that, yes, he did have sexual dialogue with this person. Yes, he found that to be exciting and invigorating. But at a certain point, and I believe my son, and I know he's not perfect by any means, but at a certain point, it sounded like my son was ready to talk about something else other than sex. And this perpetrator, the other party, constantly tried to bring their conversation back towards something sexual.
Okay.
And from what I can remember about being a teen and so forth, generally teenage gals, my experience has been they want to chat, they want to be on the phone, they want to text, they want to be on Facebook, and they don't want to talk with some strange guy on the internet. It just, the behavior didn't seem conducive to what a normal, typical, reasonable 15-year-old girl would be doing, and the conversations were way too sexual in nature.
Well, you told me, Michael, and we're going to pick this up here, and I got to take a 60-second timeout, but after discussion, counseling, and prayer, that your son understands that he was just being used. We can pick up on that when I get back. I got to take a 1-minute timeout. Again, I'll mention the products again when I get back because they're going to help you understand this situation and learn more at millstonejustice.org. I'm coming back. Don't go away.
Bringing you the current issues of our day every week that helps you define our times as days of anticipation of Christ's soon return. We are Understanding the Times Radio with Jan Markell.
Myrtle Beach investigator Milton Adams has helped arrest more than 20 online predators from across the nation, even the world.
It's amazing how many people out there actually want to solicit a child. Every time I get online, I'm pretty much solicited. It usually doesn't take long at all.
You could say Adams is racing to save a life, trying to find online predators before they find your children.
Well, that's one of the reasons I do what I do. I have 4 daughters of my own.
Over 700,000 sex offenders live in America. They fill us with fear. What should we know about sex offenders? What do they want us to know about themselves? And where do they live once they're released from prison? They are America's pariahs, pushed into the shadows.
My name is Julie. When I was 13, I started talking to Tom. He didn't act or even sound like a 56-year-old man. so he was different on the computer. It felt nice to have somebody who wasn't always trying to tell you what to do.
Let's go back to our conversation with Patrick Crough and Michael. Once again, here is Jan Markell.
And welcome back. And I have been talking this hour with investigator Patrick Crough, and we'll mention his products again at the end of the program. And also, Michael, we're not using last names, and Michael's been talking to us about his son Joshua, who actually was very much a victim of the whole electronic world that is spying, prying, and just plain being a predator to preteens and teens today. And I just want to give, as I was talking to Michael on the phone recently here in the last day or so, and he gave me some words to parents. He said, know how to use the devices your kids are using. Number 2, be very nosy. Don't be afraid to walk up to them and say, stop, I want to see what you're doing. He said, have an agreement that this is okay. Number 4, parents should be able to look at anytime at the profiles, at the passwords, at their Facebook. Parents should be able to look at them anytime. Next bullet point, parents should have access to all accounts. Next point, there should be rules set. Then don't say, as some of you are thinking this, particularly if you're grandparents, I'm too old. This is not my generation. Michael's word to you is, make it your generation. And the last word he had for you all was read and ask others for help on learning technology if you have to do that. Michael, go ahead. I summed up, but I want you to speak into this.
Well, what I want to talk about is, where my son is at today.
Yep.
And, he's loved very, very much by his family. I'm actually raising him up by myself. He's been with me for about the last decade. So we have a very close father-son relationship. Mm-hmm. My son, he has a best friend that he talks with, and we just got registered for high school, and, we're just trying to stay focused on getting our homework done every day. So I don't know what I would have ever done if someone would have got their hands on my son, but thank God we're not dealing with that, and thank you so much for letting me share our story.
Well, and Patrick, but you also said to me that, there was some counseling involved here too, and prayer also helped. Was that right?
Yes, absolutely. We've done counseling, we do prayer, we go to church with each other. Mm-hmm. And prayer is so important. I don't think that it's done enough. I think that we can do it more, but it's a direct link for us to come together and go to the Lord.
Patrick Crough, when I talked with you just months ago now, and you expressed as we closed that program how important prayer was for what you do. Speak to us about that.
Having the Lord on our side and guiding us with His wisdom and His direction is huge. There is a spiritual aspect to this criminality and this victimization. So prayer is the first and foremost best weapon to use against it. Corporate prayer as churches to pray for their children and the fellowship. Parents praying over their children every night. When you lie in bed at night worrying about your children, replace worry with prayer. Not only brings you a sense of comfort beyond your understanding, but it certainly will, I think, in the end, keep your children safe and pray that the Lord just bestows upon them wisdom beyond their years for what they're facing out there in the world today.
You had some thoughts for parents, too.
Just to put a little capstone on Michael's experience with his son, Josh, Mike said some very key things there, his last words, and I applaud him. It's all about spending time. And time is a short commodity in today's world as parents because of our economic stresses we're encountering, and many parents having a single parent such as Mike or dual parents having to work overtime or extra jobs. The enemy knows that, and they manipulate that. So be wary of people who are coming up to you and offering their help to help you with your children. Not all people are like that, but take a moment to pause and really kind of evaluate what it is they're looking to do. Are they trying to isolate your children from you? That's a key element. Get the book if you can get this book, not because we're trying to sell it. It's chock full with insightful suggestions from a law enforcement perspective based on me and my colleagues have seen over 20 years working special victims and major crimes. But getting back to Michael's situation, his son was in a place where he's developing sexually. The perps know that. Boys have a heightened sex drive at that age. The perps know that. They know how to basically portray themselves as young women, draw that sexuality out, and eventually victimize those boys. And that's what happened here, we suspect. What can we do to reduce this risk? Mike's response was spot on. However, if I was able to talk to Mike or some parents like him, and they came to me before this happened, I would say to parents, the key to reducing the risk is communication. Communication, communication. And you can start that out by asking 2 questions every day, no matter, as soon as your child can talk. And it basically, that's your foundation for your discussion, daily discussions. And you can start out by simply asking, what good thing, what bad thing happened? Why do we ask that question? Because that's usually the first thing on our children's minds. Somebody mistreated them, somebody was unfair, somebody hurt them, somebody may in fact be bullying them, which is important in today's world, because bullying, either in person or on cyberspace, is becoming an important issue to deal with. So what bad thing? Relative to the issue we've discussed, key question is, what good thing happened to you today? Tell me about what's going on in your life. Who's treating you well? In this instance, Michael's son may have said, hey, Dad, I met a girl, and I'm really enjoying it, before things got a little weird.
Right.
You know, things initially may have started out just like it would normally with a relationship at that age. And he could have said, Dad, I think I met a girlfriend. Oh, really? Well, hey, keep me posted. Dad would have known something was up. And this way you've got an idea what's going on in your child's life. Now, teenagers are reticent. They don't want to talk to Mom and Dad most of the time. And it's all part of that physical, mental, emotional, sexual development. They become somewhat isolated. They want to isolate themselves from the family because they think they're evolving into an adult, much too early. How do you do that? How do you pull it out of them? Quick suggestion, and again, it's more in depth in the book. Bring them to a neutral place, like a pizza place or a hamburger joint or, some place they like to go, and spend a few minutes with them every so often and just say, hey, something about... And what did Jesus do? He used food. Jesus used food. You look at Christ's, his whole ministry. It's surrounded around food and dinners. He was eating with the sinners.
We like that.
Okay? The bottom line is, you bring a teenage somewhere where they can have food, and you share the food with them, and make it a one-on-one trip. So if you've got 4 teenagers in the family, you got your hands full. That's 4 different dates you got to have with these kids over the month. And the reason why I say that, because when you bring food into the situation in a neutral place where they have your time, your attention all alone to themselves, you'll be surprised at what you can get out of these kids. And you know why I know it works, Jan? Because I did it with criminals for over 20 years in the interview room. You break bread. Breaking bread with another human being is a form of intimacy. We eat as a family, and the children are all on themselves, and nobody's getting along a lot of times. We've all sat at those dinner tables with our kids, and it's like sometimes just overbearing. But you take one of those children out into a neutral place and just get a snack or a quick sandwich, a submarine sandwich or something like that, and you spend some little quality time with them, you'll be surprised how they open up and talk to you. And the book will give you suggestions on how to break into those conversations.
Let me give the book info again. It's Seducers Among Our Children, How to Protect Your Child from Sexual Predators. Olive Tree Views, VIEWS.org, olivetreeviews.org, or call the office here. And we're here for you to take your order over the phone. Again, this isn't about sales. It's about getting information out. Michael, I too want to commend you for being able to not only come on here and be honest about all of this, and probably more than anything, have a happy report here at the end, because your son wasn't taken away, wasn't kidnapped, wasn't murdered, beaten up, anything like that. You intervened in time, and I know that's not every story, because I've been watching a lot online. Not every story has a happy ending. A lot of them, most of them don't.
Thank you so much, Jan. And just one final word to your audience. If you have a young person in your life, have the conversation now. Don't let the devil hold you back. Don't let anything hold you back. Have the conversation now. Talk now. Do exactly what our guest speaker said. Get your young person in your life that you love. Get them to that neutral place. Get a little food in the tummy and ask them, hey, what bad thing happened to you? Because, as kids, that's always the number one thing on their mind. And, hey, what good things happen? I can see how wonderful of advice that is from our guest speaker. And thank you so much for taking time out to do this and to have this show, Jan. And thank you so much for having Patrick come, too.
Okay, gentlemen. Patrick, we certainly can bring you back for more updates on the topic if you're open to that, because we had obviously 2 guests today. With both of you have a lot to say, so if you're open to coming back, we'll do it again.
Very much so. Jan, let me just one little epilogue relative to that question, what good thing? the perps are making our children feel real good about themselves.
Okay.
So we got to catch up to them. That's the importance of that question. And thank you so much for having me on this show. I really appreciate it.
Well, folks, this has not been the most uplifting information today, and I will tell you that this book, Seducers Among Our Children, is blunt. If you're afraid of reading this kind of topic, then, avoid it, but you avoid it at your own peril and the peril of those you love. But it's a blunt, to-the-point book, and I know we've had to deal with some issues today that are that way as well. The problem behind the topic is the epidemic. It's absolutely epidemic, and it's sort of that way because of our electronic world. So we're appealing to you to get acquainted with the topic, reduce the tragedies happening, and before it comes to your address in your hometown, because it very well may. Again, you can learn more at millstonejustice.org. Look into the books I said that we carry. And say, by the way, Patrick Crough is available to your church. Very reasonable. I don't even believe he charges for it. Probably a love offering. Your church, go through his website, millstonejustice.org. He'll come and talk to you, your congregation, about some of the issues here. millstonejustice.org. So in an age of turmoil and corruption, we can only say, again, with Isaiah the prophet, I like to close with this reference a lot, but God is the stability of our times, is what Isaiah says, the prophet. And he's the only stability of our times, because our world is crazy, changing, and filled with people who aren't very nice, and times that are very perilous. He is our refuge and strong tower. He's there for you today. I want to thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next time.